Hey folks, my name is Jim Aspel. I'm a board certified workers' compensation attorney in Farmington, Connecticut. And today I wanted to talk to you about who is covered under workers' compensation in the state of Connecticut. That's a question that arises from time to time, and the answer is not typically as straightforward as you might think. There's a bunch of little ins and outs to it. And generally, the answer, like so many things in workers' compensation, is going to be found in the statute, specifically the Connecticut Workers' Compensation Act. It's Title 31 of the General Statutes. And if you want to find out who's covered under workers' compensation, basically what you do, like so many other things in the law, is you look at the definition section. And what we do is we take a look at the statutory section and we see what Title 31 or who Title 31 defines as an employee. An employee is typically one that has to be covered under workers' compensation. So if we look at section 31-275, that's the definition section, and then we scroll down to subparagraph 9. Basically what it tells us is an employee means any person, okay, number one, who has entered into or works under any contract or service or apprenticeship with an employer, whether the contract contemplated the performance of duties within or without the state. So basically that's your conventional employee. It doesn't matter whether or not you're doing the work in the state of Connecticut or you're contracted in Connecticut and are doing the work out of state, you're an employee for the purposes of the Workers' Compensation Act. As the statute indicates, if you're working as an apprentice, you're also considered an employee and would be covered under workers' compensation. The second criteria, and this is a little bit unusual, is a sole proprietor or business partner who accepts the provisions of the Workers' Compensation Act. So in other words, if you're running your own business or if you're a sole proprietor or something of that nature, you can elect to cover yourself for the purposes of workers' compensation insurance in Connecticut. That's something you would talk about with your business insurance professional, and if you are in fact a sole proprietor or a business owner, that's something that I would highly recommend that you do. Relatively speaking, it's less expensive than some other forms of insurance that you could cover yourself with in order to protect yourself from wage loss or unexpected medical expenses if you happen to get injured while doing your job as a sole proprietor. So that's something that I would recommend, and if you do elect to cover yourself, you would be covered under workers' compensation in the state of Connecticut. Interestingly, and probably not surprisingly, anyone who's elected to serve as a member of the General Assembly is covered under workers' compensation. So if you're a legislator and you get hurt while going down the lunch line in the cafeteria at the Legislative Office Building, you're covered under workers' compensation, and we would be happy to help you with your claim. Salaried or paid member of any police department or fire department, that kind of stands to reason. Those are typically people who you would consider to be an employee. It doesn't matter whether or not there's a state police officer or a municipal police officer, a state firefighter, municipal firefighter. It doesn't matter. Typically, they're going to be covered under the Connecticut Workers' Compensation Act. Police officers are entitled to some additional benefits under other sections of the general statutes that aren't germane to this video, but that's something you'd want to consider too. But if you're a cop or a fireman and you get hurt on the job, you're going to be afforded workers' compensation insurance. Elected or appointed officials of any town, city, or borough. So if you're the mayor and you get a paper cut pushing the budget across your desk, that injury to your finger is going to be covered under workers' compensation. And likewise to the General Assembly person, we're happy to help you with that claim. So if you're an elected official, you get hurt on the job, you are covered for the purposes of workers' compensation under the Connecticut General Statutes, and you can bring a claim for any on-the-job injury. Probate judges. Probate judges, like any other elected official, they're going to be covered for workers' compensation under Connecticut General Statute, Section 31-275. They're defined as an employee, so a probate judge, or for that matter, any employee of the probate judge, a clerk, anybody happening to be working under their auspices, administering probate claims, they're going to be covered under the Workers' Compensation Act as well. And then I'd also point out that if you're a volunteer firefighter and you do sustain an injury in the course and scope of your duties as a volunteer firefighter, then you would be covered under the Workers' Compensation Act as well. And those are the primary ones. There's a couple of other ones. If you're a member of the armed forces and you're injured while performing the duties as a member of the armed forces, you're going to be covered under workers' compensation in Connecticut. So typically, I mean, frankly, in 30 plus years, I've never seen that happen, but I would imagine what that's talking about is if you're an employee of the Connecticut Army National Guard or the Connecticut Air National Guard and you sustain an injury. Obviously, they have installations across the state, and people are doing work in that capacity. If you sustain an injury, you're going to be covered under workers' compensation as defined in the general statutes. And then again, any volunteer firefighter. So those are sort of the long and the short of who's covered under workers' compensation. There's always going to be the issue of whether or not 1099 employees are covered for workers' compensation purposes. That's something I talk about in a different video. But if you want to see the exact list, again, it's section 31-275 of the Connecticut General Statutes. In section 9, it sets out the definition of who is an employee, and that's going to give you the basic lodestar to answer that question for you. If you have any other questions, feel free to give me a call. We're in Farmington, 860-523-8783. You can visit our website at any time. It's www.aspbellaw.com. We do have a Facebook group. It's Ask a Connecticut Workers' Compensation Attorney. You can post your question there, and we will be happy to respond to you. You can also direct message me at any time. If you found this video helpful, please feel free to give it a thumbs up. If you want to learn more about Connecticut Workers' Compensation, I'd urge you to subscribe to my channel. Hit the subscribe button, and we will alert you anytime we drop one of these videos on Connecticut Workers' Compensation topics. Hope you have a safe afternoon and enjoy the day. Thanks.